Hey, Chux, a friend of mine, suggested a video involving Pokemon strategies, or basically strategies you use to get through the game, as opposed to competitive play. Now the classic example he used was the Brock-Misty dilemma. Now in the original game, Brock and Misty were pretty tough because they had relatively powerful Pokemon compared to the Pokemon you had at your disposal to fight them with. I mean, at that point, there were only a certain amount of Pokemon species you could use. Brock, you could pretty much use anything in the forest and earlier, and that was not much. You're talking things like Rattatas and Pidgeotos and Pikachus and bug Pokemon. And honestly, that's not the greatest thing to use against rock types like Onix. So, pretty much you had to use your starter if you picked Squirtle or Bulbasaur. Even Bulbasaur didn't learn a good grass attack until later on in the game. Or Butterfree. If you used Charmander, you pretty much had to use Butterfree. There was not much else out there that could take it out. Butterfree had access to Confusion, which was a special attack, which really hurt Onix because Onix had very poor special rating. It would be special defense now, but it was combined in the first game. And of course with Misty, you were pretty much guaranteed to be using a Pikachu, and even then Starmie was pretty tough because you pretty much had to grind in that one area once you jumped over the ledge. Those are classic examples of the game strategies. After that, I mean, you had access to more Pokemon, so there wasn't really an issue. But in the modern game series, I do play through a game one of two ways. The first way is I just rush through the game. Say I'm playing through a second time and I want to get specific Pokemon and I want another Master Ball or things like that. This would be an example of me going through Ruby and Sapphire. I would pretty much get a team of 6 that I was going to use to fight the Elite Four. I was going to go through the entire game with it. I would pick them up as they came along, and once the permanent member of the team came in, the substitute would just be stay in the box for the rest of the game. Now, the way I'm going to play Black and White when it comes out is a different way, because I don't know much about the Pokemon. I'm not going to look it up, so I'm not going to know what's good or what's you're going to need to use against the Elite Four. And because of that, I'm pretty much going to be grinding a lot and capturing a lot of Pokemon and getting probably around 12 at-level Pokemon to use, something like that. So that's what I'm going to do. But one strategy I pretty much use throughout the game is pretty consistently is I'll have one of certain types of Pokemon. Obviously I'm going to use my starter, but I'm going to have a fire type, a grass type, a water type, and an electric type. I'm going to have one of those 4, and then 2 other types to round out my team. Obviously if some of them are combined types, it does help out, but I'm pretty consistent and I want those 4, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the fire type. One thing to note about the fire type is that, especially lately, if you don't pick up your starter as a fire, there's not many other fire types. The starters are usually a pretty solid choice of a fire type. But the fire types are useful because honestly, steel types are a pain in the ass to deal with, especially if you don't have access to all the Pokemon that could come later in the game. So, like say there was an early Magneton or something like that. If I don't have a ground Pokemon, that fire type is going to be very useful to take out that Pokemon. So fire types are always useful in that regard. Water types, obviously somebody's going to have to surf. So a water type can do that, but also since there's a lot of rock types and ground types and any other fire types there might be, it's always pretty much useful to have a water Pokemon there. Plus, when you do learn Surf, that's a strong move and can help out a lot. Grass types are useful for a couple of reasons. Obviously, they take out water types, which there are almost always a lot of water types in the game. But they're also usually a great Pokemon to have around if you want to capture other Pokemon. A grass type usually has access to things like Sleep Powder or Stun Spore or Poison Powder, which is a nice thing to have if you want to capture Pokemon. I know my Budew in the last game would definitely help me out just by having Sleep Powder. And the electric type I just always find to be useful. I always seem to use an electric type a lot when I get to the Elite Four because of the prevalence of water and flying types, and I just always find them useful to have. Plus, Thunder Wave is also useful if you want to capture something. So I usually have one of those 4 types of Pokemon to fight the Elite Four. I'll usually have some sort of I'd like to have a fighting type, just because the fighting move is so useful against so many different types of Pokemon, and then just some other utility type. Also, I will go through the game with an HM Slave. HMs are kind of annoying because they take a good move out of, they take a slot from a good move out of one of your core Pokemon. And if you have an HM Slave, that's just less HMs your good Pokemon have to have. HM Slaves, I've noticed that the rat Pokemon, or the beaver one in the last game, usually make good HM Slaves. So I will probably take that one in black and white and use it to have strength or rock smash or cut or anything it can learn, really. And I have no idea what its HM moves are, but those are my general strategies when I fight the game. When I get to the Elite Four, I pretty much always have to have something that can use an ice attack because of a dragon Pokemon that's usually kicks your ass at some point in the game. Garchomp was a great example of that in Diamond and Pearl. I mean, if I did not have an ice attack to take out that thing, it could just kill me. It was at such a higher level than me, it could just totally take me out. And that's another thing grass or water types are good at, is they can usually learn an ice move. In Diamond and Pearl, I had a Gyarados with an Ice Fang that did the trick. I don't know what I'm going to have in this game, but I'm sure the water Pokemon will probably pick up the ice move. But yeah, those are the general strategies I had throughout the game. I hope that makes sense for Chux. And if you guys have any strategies you use throughout the Pokemon game series, go ahead and leave them in the comment box, or the doobly-doo, as Wheezy Waiter would call it. I will see you next time.